Together, brought to you by getAbstract. I'm Kirsten Müller-Daubermann, and I am your host for today's session. We're very glad that you are joining us from wherever you are in the world this Wednesday, and we've got a great conversation for you today. We started these get-togethers as a live book club, essentially a reading club, where every week we post a different abstract for you to read, and we invite a guest on to discuss a relevant topic, especially considering the time that we're all going through with this radical paradigm shift that we're facing in our home and work lives. We try to put these abstracts and these topics in context for you so that it can help you make better decisions in your personal and professional lives. That's what we're all about. Today's interview is with Samantha Shad. She's joining me on the other side of the screen there. She is an author, a former Hollywood screenwriter, and her book, The Right to Happiness, which is the abstract that we assigned you all to read before joining us today, is a really fascinating look at the power of storytelling and how even people who don't maybe consider themselves writers can become a better writer, can dive into this process and actually use writing to help change your brain, change your story, and change your life. So without further ado, Samantha, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Great to see you too. So first of all, where are you joining us from today, and how are you doing in coping?
I'm in North Carolina, in Chapel Hill, Durham, North Carolina, and it's spring, which is wonderful. It's very quiet, and writers really love the quiet, so I've gotten a lot done, and we're doing the best we can. Everybody stay safe and stay healthy.
Yeah, wonderful. So you've had a lot of experience, obviously years of experience in the entertainment field, not only as a screenwriter, but as an entertainment attorney as well. So I'd first love to hear from you, your perspective on, every sector of the economy is having to shift, adapt, and change throughout this process. So how do you see the outbreak of the pandemic and these lockdowns affecting the entertainment industry?
I think like all other industries, we don't really know what the change is going to be long term. Production is closed. Most development is closed. So the industry is in effect closed, like many others. So that's the short term. The long term is different. I think that, for example, when we go to the movies, it's a different experience than watching a movie at home. And it's a social experience. There's something called neural coupling that happens when we see something in a large group. So we understand that comedies are funnier in a large group, for example. What is going to happen to the social aspects of entertainment when they're so used to being individualized? It changes our brains some. And I have no idea what that's going to really look like. I do know it will be a change in how we consume entertainment. And how entertainment helps us navigate the world, because we'll be consuming it differently. So in the larger sense, I don't know, but changes are coming.
That's fascinating. So your book and your work is all about how writing can be transformative for us personally, psychologically, even physically. How did you first come to be motivated about writing?
How did I start writing, or writing this book? I started writing one day I was... I started writing because one day I was in front of a computer. I was in my 30s. And I was in front of a computer and just started writing, and realized within about a half hour that I was just happier there, that there was something uniquely peaceful to me about looking at a computer, being in that quiet and alone with my thoughts. So in a way, the computer changed it because it was such a comfortable place. But I was still an attorney, and it took a while for me to transition into being a full-time screenwriter. But I came up with an idea. I tried to have writers that I represented write it for me because I didn't believe I could write a screenplay. They all said it was horrible and that they would never do it, even though they were starving and they needed the money. And so eventually I had to write it. And then I was really fortunate because, after a slew of rejections, it was bought and I was a screenwriter. And that transition was easier because I was from an entertainment family, so it wasn't as dramatic as other people might have seen it. But the writing itself, the years of crafting stories, deeply changed my life. It's like the career change was minor, the soul change was major.
I love that. And we are going to dive into that more deeply. But why generally is storytelling so powerful?
So telling stories is the most powerful communications and intellectual system, really, that we've ever developed. We started telling stories because we had information that was important to spread in our society. I'm talking tens of thousands of years ago. We had important information, but we realized very early that we had to wrap it in something that kept people's attention. So we developed stories as a way to make the information we needed to share more available. People would pay attention to it. And our brains adapted to that, so that stories are always problem-solving machines. A story is somebody in a problem who learns something and is better for it. Every story is like that. And so it became part of our brain and then part of our culture. And it is what distinguishes, one of the things that distinguishes humans from every other species. The ability to tell a story meant we had a worldwide network of information sharing. And our brains still operate on that system. So stories are that big.
I love it. So what are some tips for people to just get started writing? And why is it so important now in our particular context?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. First of all, the core of my approach is about writing stories. And we can talk about why stories are different. But you don't have to start with a story. You can start with journaling. You can start with the original writing for one's soul started with diaries at about 1,000. So anything is good. But if you really want to get started and you think it's frightening, sit down for 20 minutes, take a pen to a piece of paper, and just keep writing. And if you don't know what to start with, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. Because no one is capable of writing that for 20 minutes without changing. Everyone learns something in that process. And that's how you start.
That's a great tip.
Thanks.
And what benefits can starting to write have right now, especially, obviously we're in a very difficult time with everything changing constantly. What benefits can writing offer to people right now?
So it's so big that it feels like flim flam. I want to say that at the beginning, that the original writing for health was started by a psychologist at the University of Texas in the late 1980s. And his first concern was, can we help with people's health? And he had people sit down and write for 20 minutes a day for 4 days, a very short amount of time, 80 minutes total. And it radically changed people's lives. You had lower blood pressure, better immune reactions, fewer medical visits, a higher affect, a more optimistic affect. The benefits are enormous and long list. It's not for everybody, but it's for almost everybody. And actually, for business people, I know they're very fact-oriented. So here are some facts. Not only does it have all those health benefits, but one of the studies that was done, and the research on this is really good, they had 100 people who had been fired from engineering jobs, fairly high-level engineering jobs in their late 50s, and their prospects for reemployment were bad. 6 months after they were all laid off, they took 100 of those people, half of them in a writing group, half of them in a non-writing group. And those men, they were all men, wrote for 30 minutes a day for 5 days, not even a week. After 3 months, the non-writers, 5% of them had positive outcomes and gotten jobs. 5%. Of the writers, 27% got jobs. 7 months later, the non-writers, 18% of them had jobs. The writers had 53% employment. And that was with
Wow.
2.5 hours of writing. 2.5 hours. So
A week.
it changes
right?
everything. Yes, less than a week, half hour a day. A movie. The time you take to see to a movie, spread it out over 5 days, change your life. Pretty good.
So Samantha, as a screenwriter, are you telling us to watch less Netflix and actually put pen to paper and write?
Yes, I am. But I have to say that I watch Netflix with a timer because I time when the first act starts and all that. So it's a different experience. But writing really is different. Watching and reading, by the way, are also pretty good. Watching fiction, reading fiction, because it engages a part of your brain called the default mode network, which is about social relationships. And what happens is you stop worrying about yourself and you start engaging with the characters. And those characters are going through a story. So they're learning to overcome obstacles and solve problems. So you learn that way. But when you write, it's like miracle grow on that process, because every story is an engagement with a problem and finding solutions. So if you're doing that as the writer, you're really solving those problems. Your unconscious will send you problems you really have. And then you solve them if you write the story. And you think, oh, I'm just writing fiction, which is great because you're really solving the problems. You're not throwing roadblocks up for yourself. And your brain, one part of your brain thinks it's really important whether it's true or not. But there's another part of the brain that comes in and goes, no, we don't care whether it's true or not. We've changed our brain around the solution. So you really change. So yes, right. Changed my life completely.
Talk a little bit about that. How did it change your life completely? I know you switched jobs, but how did it have maybe a therapeutic effect on you? How did it see you change? How did you see it changing your own brain and your own story?
I was a mess. Okay. Just a mess. My mother was a psychopath, and I had the usual set of abandoned, raped, abused, all the horribles. And I really was a mess. And when I started writing, after my first script, I realized I felt a little bit better about my life. And after a while, I realized that every script, every story that I really worked on was solving a problem that I hadn't recognized I had, but was really important. So it crept up on me. And after a while, I could look back and say, I learned this and I'm better at this and this and this, until one day I went, I'm happy. It changed everything in my life. And it was fantastic. And they paid me for it. It was great.
Wow, I love that. I'd love to hear you answer the objection, because the executive function in our brain sometimes, if we try to do something new or exercise a new muscle like creativity, the executive function can come in and say, you're not good at that. That's not your role. It's not practical, or you're never going to use that story anyway. How would you encourage people to just try it? Especially if they're someone who thinks that they don't have a creative bone in their body, and they basically have, cut themselves off from success before they even start.
First of all, it's not about the results. The great thing about writing and most creative endeavors, it's not about, if it's about selling a bestseller, you're in trouble. Not very many people can do that. If it's about sitting down and having an experience that enriches everything in your life, then that's why you do it. And the reason people have trouble with it is that they are in that, I always get these confused, the left brain, that's very organized. I always call it the accounting brain, because it's fact-based and it's accurate, it's specific, and it's limiting in that sense. The other brain, which I live in most of the time, is just wacky. It's going all over the place. But it's also very in tune with social relationships, with interacting with other people, with understanding how other people operate so that you can work with them better. The more time you spend in your creative work, the more you develop your default mode network, the more you are able to understand other people and therefore get more out of them and with them. So it's a wonderful way, whether you're a professional or not. I mean, there aren't that many professionals, but everyone benefits from this. The results are so overwhelming in a way. And personally, I don't know if I would have made it at all. It saved my life. And writers always say, it saved my life. It really does. And you don't have to do it professionally. Wow. You have to just sit down and have a good time.
I love that. I just want to let everyone know that if you have a question at any time for Samantha, please dive in. Feel free to ask your question. If you have a comment or you want to share some way that writing has positively impacted your life, then please do that. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's live here on Facebook or on our Vimeo page or on YouTube. Please let us know and share your stories, because they might be encouraging to other people who come back and read the comments as well. Samantha, a really, really neat part about your book is you not only give practical writing tools, but you also talk about the science. And you've talked a little bit about the brain already, but neuroplasticity is a concept that is being explored, researched, and talked about much more, especially in popular psychology. Tell us what neuroplasticity is and the science behind how storytelling rewires your brain.
So neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to literally change. Kind of does it neuron by neuron, a little piece at a time. But for a long time, we believed that the brain was fairly static once it was adult. And now we know that's certainly not true. That the more you do something, if you pay attention to it, if you're concentrating on it, the more the neurons in your brain line up for what you're doing. The expression is neurons that fire together, wire together. So you build up a network. And the more you do that, the more it becomes the habit or the practice of the brain to go there. So, for example, if you're constantly looking at something negative, you have a nice negative highway running through the middle of your brain, right? But if you're looking at something that grows your soul, for example, then that's what you're building in your brain. And the brain, although it has so many neurons and cells, it has very limited real estate. So what you put in it matters. So if you sit down and repeat an exercise over time, it takes over more of your brain. And with story writing, because stories are problem-solving machines, what you're doing in the guise of fiction is working out a problem that you have and building the highway. And eventually, a lot of those neurons that were just really busy in their network being negative, there's no room for them anymore. They become positive. You literally change the networks in your brain. So the change isn't small. It's huge, because if you change your brain, you change your mind. And you can do it if you're concentrating. And when you write, you're always concentrating. So that's why writing is particularly good.
I love that. And it's so hopeful, too. I think that whatever has happened to us in our lives, whatever experiences that we've had, good or bad, we can sometimes carry them like labels or think that our story is already written. But it's so hopeful to know that there are things we can do, like writing, where we can change our story, that there is hope. It doesn't always have to be that way. And you don't always have to be defined by things that happen to you. You can become someone new. And that's not just like a new agey, inspirational, motivational type of thing. It's actual science.
It really is, and it's fantastic. The way the memory works, our memories work, we forget a lot of stuff, and a lot of people worry about that, but really it's great, because we also forget the things that are hurting us, and we can replace them with more positive things. Now, people do gratitude journals and stuff, and that works, but when you really go in and reprocess it in a fictional form, you don't have enough neurons to keep on holding all the old stuff. They get repurposed. And a wonderful thing about memory is it's totally changeable. What you and I think we absolutely remember has something to do with what actually happened, but not that much. Therapy is a way of neuroplastic change, right? You look at something over and over again until it looks different to you. Well, writing is that. Only it doesn't take 3 years. It could take 30 minutes.
I love it. So we have a great question from Facebook. How do you feel about sharing personal writings online? If I write in my journal, should I keep it private, or are there benefits to sharing my struggle publicly?
That's really hard. Okay. First of all, online is the wild, wild west. So I would not want to share my most personal feelings out there. I mean, even your most serious, rational, controlled feelings can be abused out there. And I think it's very important that you have a place where you have no filters, right? You just write what's coming through the pen, what's coming through your head, and you're free there and you're safe there. And I think as soon as you think you might post it somewhere or share it, you start editing it. And that's not good for your soul. It's better to just keep writing. You can achieve the same, however, if you put it in a story and then publish that, because even though you and I would know that it's sort of about you, other people won't know. And isn't that great? It's the beauty of fiction.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Samantha, it has been a joy to have you here, and you're so full of wisdom that we really just feel very, very grateful that you've been able to join us. I do have one last question for you, for the storyteller herself, and that is, looking at our world and the global outbreak of the coronavirus, how would you write the end to our story?
It's a great question.
If we're in the second act right now, what's the third act?
We're actually only in the middle of the second act, I have to say. We got a long way down to go, and brace yourself. And what happens at the bottom of the second act is everything is lost. And while there are places in the world right now where that's true, we know it's going to get worse. But I would use as my model Black Panther, which, was a total comic book kind of movie, but it's also a beautiful movie. And the main character in that movie is challenged to open up his country to the world. And what he does is he must face that he has to change, but he also has to heal. So the end of that movie is this leader who has faced his own death, realizes he has to heal the very first wound, which is when his father was bad to his uncle and caused pain. And it's a healing end. So we have to look at this situation now and go, what are we learning? How do we improve this? How do we be bigger, kinder in a global situation where things just travel so fast? And I think that's how you go as a society. Individually, I don't know a better way than writing. I'm sure there are other really great ways, but for me, during the pandemic, I want everybody to take a pen to a piece of paper and see if it helps them. They have the quiet time. Use it for something good. Make good use of it.
Make good use of the time. Wonderful words to end on. Samantha, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And thank all of you so much for watching and your good questions. We hope that you will share this resource with your friends, your teammates, colleagues, families, whomever may find it useful. Lots of good practical tools in here to make good use of that time, exercise our creative brains, and heal through all of this. We just want to let you know as well that if you want to learn more about these live get-together sessions, you can do so at getAbstract.com. There you can also sign up for our daily newsletter, The Journal, which gives you all of these kind of trending topics and puts them into context. And it also gives you the schedule for our week of get-togethers. We'll be back here tomorrow, same place, live on Facebook, YouTube, and our Vimeo page at 5 p.m. Central European Time and 11 a.m. on the U.S. East Coast. We hope you have a wonderful day wherever you're watching us from the world, and we will see you soon. Bye.
Extraordinary challenges require extraordinary responses from thought leaders, company executives, and employees. As the coronavirus pandemic unfolds and businesses scramble to adapt to escalating containment efforts, getAbstract is here to help organizations navigate this crisis wisely and professionally. For over 20 years, we've been committed to providing relevant knowledge from reliable sources to help people make better decisions in their personal and professional lives. In line with our mission to empower decision makers with relevant knowledge from trusted sources, we are proud to offer businesses free access to our full library until May 18. Embark on a no-strings-attached knowledge journey with getAbstract. Sign up today.